Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and FOF fans. We've got a special one for you all tonight on the Mythic League. This is we're calling it a lower finals.
Yeah, it's
We're
an emergency.
yeah, we're an oopsie lower finals. Yeah. Well, on how we got there, all the real ones know how it happened, but we're looking forwards to the future. That is what we were told by Chris, so we're rolling with the punches. But
Yeah.
my name is Rafa. I've got Joshi here. And for those that know the FOF League, we used to be in the league. We withdrew, but now we're coming back to cast because some of our closest friends are now in a do or die match to get back to grand finals.
Yeah. Closest friends, worst enemies. We'll see how they end up playing out today. These two teams have a lot of history between them, Mark. You and I both know that. We've been there. We saw the rise of YUBI. We actually recommended them to this league in the first place. And you're like, huh, those guys don't seem too good. We can probably take them down. Unfortunately, ended up in the wrong league. But going through, it is important to note that we have both made a couple of bingo cards for today. And
Hell yeah.
unfortunately, most of my bingo cards that I was looking for are already not going to be possible with all the bans that we've already seen. If you're curious of what that looks like, go check out the FF Trash Talk channel. You can play along as well, make your own. But as we already get into it, we're already seeing a big difference when we were watching TDE play against SLR last week in the semifinals. Jinx was the first pick for our 5 straight games, and now TDE are shifting because they're not playing with Ultravox Spencer, they're playing with Escape Spencer.
Mmm. The battle of two Spencers throughout the series from TDE, meaning, as we got a chance to talk to Zane beforehand, the fact that they have 100% of the Spencers in the entire league makes them the
Pretty
superior
good.
team in Mythic, which, not bad track record. Both Escape and Ultravox have had pretty stellar numbers throughout the season. But for us, I'm really curious about. Wait, wait! I already got something on my bingo card. Yeah, let's
Oh, no.
go.
Wait, did you
The
put yours in
Olaf.
Trash Talk already?
No. I need to.
Okay.
I need to go put it down. So for context, my bingo card is a random generated one, so that you guys can follow along. Joshi's is a little bit more personal. I don't know how to randomly generate that, so uh, I'll go
Yeah,
do
no
that.
worries.
Carry
We'll
on the
figure it
draft
out.
for me while I go
Yeah,
do Discord things.
we were looking it up, and for anybody who is just watching, and for some reason this is your first time watching FOF, UB is a Loyalytics church team. Every single time that they see a champion with high win rate, they will go pick it. I was expecting the Maokai or the Urgot to come through, but as Mark already looked up before, Olaf top lane, currently the highest win rate champion in the entire game. And I know it's something that Red has played in the past, so it's not super surprising to me that they're already going to be going for it. But the big thing for me is whenever I see like top laners picked early against Jaffe, I always get a little bit surprised because of how often he just gets these weird counter picks and just kind of runs over the side lane. But we've seen very different versions of Jaffe this season, Mark. While they were in heroic, he was doing really kind of okay for a lot of the season, but he was beasting a lot of the mythic top laners, and it's really odd to kind of watch how this player can have really good games and really bad ones. And I know Mark, you and I have very specific memories of playing against this guy.
Mm,
You would probably remember it more than I would because you were in the game where I was just sitting on the sidelines molding at Chef, not saying anything.
oh, I don't like to think fondly of that Trundle top lane experience. It was a fun scrim up until the point where I heard from my top laner saying, "Oh yeah, I lost 3 towers, guys." Like,
Yeah, I'm
what?
getting dove 100 to 0 underneath my own turret. It's like, oh, were you gonna let us know that this was gonna become a problem? Yeah, I thought the first one was a fluke. It's all good, but that's just what Jaffe tends to do to people. We saw a lot. We saw some great Fiora gameplay earlier in the season, but now as we move on to the second half of the draft, you see both compositions have a
Ooh.
lot of range to them, right? Or rather, TDE has a lot of range, and UB has some tools to try and ignore it. The big thing that we're going to be looking at, though, is how well TDE is going to build themselves a front line. One of my big things is that they will have at least one game there they don't have a single frontlining champion, and right now the best one that they have is Lilia.
And do you really want Bambi to be your main front line? I mean, we already saw what
No.
happened to our parents and or his parents in the movie.
There's no hunters yet. Okay, well that one has one gun, so not
That's one
necessarily the
gun
easiest thing.
already -1 buff or nerf to the
Yeah.
Lilia's livelihood in this game.
Yeah. But one thing that we will have to see is what Jaffe chooses to play from this position, right? He's semi-blind, like he doesn't know if it's going into the Olaf. I don't imagine YUBI have committed it to one player at this point either. It is something that Utility Monster has played a lot historically. It is also something that I have seen Red play on occasion, and with such a strong champion that it is currently, wouldn't be surprised if they end up picking it up. But looking at the TDE roster, the big thing that I'm worried about is one, they don't have anybody to frontline, and two, they have a lot of magic damage at this point. It's fairly easy to just itemize a force of nature for the members of YUBI, in particular this Olaf, to really nullify a lot of what TDE wants to do.
Yeah, I'm really excited about just heavy on magic resist itemization early on to the game, and especially if this is going over to red in the top lane. Against what is probably more than
Okay.
likely going to be Sejuani top. I'm trying to think if we've ever seen Jacob play Sejuani
No,
willingly.
no.
That is, I mean, we know he plays Nunu, right? But tanks are not necessarily like in Jacob's preferred wheelhouse. You
True.
usually want to see Jacob on something that it gets a lot of farming advantages through power clearing, or oh, this would be exciting from
Okay.
Jacob, or not
Now,
Josh.
yeah. Now, if Utility Monster does lock this and it does shift around, it is going to be the Sejuani top for Jaffe into Red Shen. We will see a lot of movement around, and suddenly we actually have a bit of a front line for TDE. But this is a very different style than a lot of the ways that TDE has had a lot of success throughout the season. Typically, when they're winning, it's because Jaffe is off in a side lane, playing the Fiora, playing the Gangplank, getting a lot of sideline pressure. But it's a lot harder to do that on Sejuani, and it's a lot harder to do that on Sejuani into Shen, because Shen can just teleport out whenever he feels like. He will usually have two ways to get across the map. But for now, it is something where I feel like YUBI is in a bit more of their comfort zone, so we're going to have to rely on Escape, who's coming in for Ultravox, to try and be the difference maker in this game. We know he's a bit of a stronger laner, and that's definitely something that Bob Joseph will enjoy.
Bob Joseph is definitely someone that can either win you the game or make the game super difficult as someone that has played with it. But I think the thing that is interesting to watch about his gameplay, and especially if you're in comms with him, he is a very strong headed person. And a lot of the times, the confidence is something that we admire a lot from someone like Brian Sang, who also exhibits similar behaviors to what Bob Joseph does for a team like TDE. They're the player that is going to kind of look at a situation and say, okay, we win this, guys. Just trust, trust, believe, believe. Even if it looks like a really wonky setup,
Yeah.
sometimes they can scrap it out and they make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, we've also seen like that's how it's been working for Barrel at the World Finals. So eventually, you can get good enough at the psychopathic style to have some success. But as you called out, I feel like both these supports can be pretty pivotal in a lot of these games. The one thing that we do have to be very careful of is it's really difficult for Bob Joseph to use the hostile takeover as long as Samira's wind wall is actually up, right? That nullifies it, stops a lot of the opportunity for an Glass to prevent the dive. And so Bob Joseph is going to have to be really judicious with the way he actually tries to go for a lot of these plays. Maybe baiting out the wind wall with the handshake before he actually goes for it. But there's a lot of tools on both sides. It just feels as though Yubi's composition is just very comfortable for them, right? We talked about this before. They love playing these just death ball style compositions.
What I'm curious about, Josh, going into this game is actually the matchup between Clovis and Zen, or Zane. The for those that don't know their first names, Zen
We
Zen
know them
and
very well.
Civillock. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
you
All
know
right,
what?
we're getting.
Story
We'll
time
have to
for
talk about
later.
that. Production's telling us we got to throw to a break while we get into the game, but we will be back in just a sec.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your patience. We got through all of the technical kinks. All the hamsters are
Nice.
running on their wheels now. We're back in it, baby.
Nice. I love getting through all the technical kinks. It's the best way to spend every Monday night. But now that we are actually into the game, we are doing the as expected 5 point from both teams. This is actually something that was spawned by YUBI, and then TDE never bothered trying to fix it. It was something that Rex tried to fix a little bit, but we gotta go back to stock standards. And these two teams again have a lot of history between them. Uh, Leaves, Zen were in Freund Zone, the big server that we all had a bunch of the UB members in long before any of us knew about FOF. And then after that, basically everybody's kind of joined from this point, and we all just kind of hang out. But the big thing we're going to see here is only one of these teams can actually make it onto finals, and both of the teams were basically in like retirement mindset. They're like, yeah, we're knocked out of the tournament. I don't know what we're going to do. And so I know both teams just stopped practicing immediately afterwards.
Can we just backtrack to the fact that you just doxed where we all hang out in
Yeah.
Freund Zone? I feel like
Look,
everyone
it's
that's
way
not.
better than the original name of the server, which I will not say
Oh,
on the
you know what?
podcast.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm just saying, if FOF start asking now the players on these two teams, hey, can I get an invite to Freund Zone? It's your fault.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, if anybody wants to go dox people and ask for the Friend Zone invite, you are good to go. Make sure you tell them that Joshi sent you. But we're
Based.
already seeing, interestingly enough, Utility Monster and Leaves are both going to be starting on the bottom side of the map, and they are both players who are known for not doing anything before they have cleared at least 5 camps and a wave.
Are we flipping the lane already at level 1? I mean, normally Brian and Jeff will do it at level 2, but that's
Yeah,
not a healthy
I mean,
trade.
that's the violent kind of thing you tend to see from both Jeff and Bob Joseph. And going a little bit too early, right? Samir doesn't do quite as much. But as we were saying, I want to go back to the junglers. We'll look back at the bottom lane here shortly. But Leaves and Utility Monster are both going to clear at least 5 camps before they even think about looking for a gank. And right now, Utility Monster actually skipping over the Raptor,
Yeah.
showcasing that he might actually have something a little bit different planned. Again, he always clears all of his camps first.
Yeah, this is actually the most surprising adaptation I've ever seen from Utility Monster in the past. If he's going for 3 camps, he wants to be on the top side
Yeah,
immediately, looking
whoa.
for this play. And this is a great timer because Jaffe, no way that he expects Utility Monster out of all junglers the entire league to skip a full clear just to burn his flash level 1.
True, and Jaffe, this is a really tough position. His wave is pushing out Leaves, and yet here, and Leaves not looking to go for an invade early on isn't going to be creating a whole lot of pressure, right? Neither of these junglers were expecting the other one to do anything early, and you can't punish them if you're not going to be taking some risks of your own. And so, Utility Monster trades his Ghost for Jaffe's Flash, and that will really put a damper on the things that Jaffe will try and do.
I'm still kind of speechless that just happened on my screen,
Yeah.
Josh.
And
This
look at this. Leaves isn't even going to try and go for either of the crabs because he doesn't know where the Olaf is. He's just going to go for a full reset. Both these junglers are so risk averse early on in the game that Utility Monster just does something a bit unexpected and Leaves doesn't know how to respond.
I think the other thing too, when you're in the mindset of what Leaves wants to do is, do I really want to tango with an Olaf who has just ganked my top laner super early on? You don't know if that now he's going to coordinate
Ooh.
with side lanes to collapse on the crab, but at this point, Leaves being able to get that early first recall, utility hasn't gotten a recall yet, so the fact that Jacob's on the bottom side of the map, he knows that a 3v3 would be advantageous on their side.
Yeah, and look at this. The freeze was broken a little bit, but Brian just going in doesn't know Leaves is here.
This is going to be tough. Maybe they can trade one onto Bob Joseph, but he already has the bailout. So even if he went down, they would have had an opportunity to trade on
Oh!
out. And this one is absolute disaster for YUBI as it's first blood over the side of TDE.
But Utility Monsters here on the side will be pushing the Leaves away, and Brian flashing forward, almost picking up Bob Joseph on the backside. But neither jungler actually has much of an impact. While Leaves doesn't get the assist, he still forces people forward. But now they go back to the farming in the mid lane. Still a little bit of tussling as well. Zenzen already pushed rather low, and I'm a little bit surprised. The Azir, while we were looking, low analytics is saying this champion is not approved. It is a bit of a Zen special, but he's not necessarily playing it to build a huge advantage early on in lane, but at least he's picked up Clovis' teleport.
Yeah. Now the question is TDE as much as a stickler on low analytics win rates
Nah.
as UB is? Yeah.
Are you looking at this draft? They have a 0 already, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's a 47, 45% win rate champion. It's not something that you would ever catch UB playing. But at the very least, Zenzen will be able to get back into lane, will be able to trade his teleport out in order to recover some of this farm. But the big loser so far is still Jaffe, as he finds himself in a very awkward position as he's down basically a whole wave. He will recover a lot of it now, but look
Mhm.
who's already on the top side at his Krug to try and make sure that they get this wave in safely.
And it's not normal that you would see junglers prioritizing tank on tank matchup to gank as a first thing in their kind of like set house and routine. But the big thing for the Shen Sejuani matchup, you have so much global pressure available to you at level 6. If you always have the push advantage because of the early pressure that your jungler gave to you, you are much more free to make plays on the other side of the map.
Now we see that Red will be backing away. We'll have the full reset to have the strength to come back onto the map. I don't expect him to teleport directly towards the top lane unless Jaffe has actually managed to get a freeze. But it doesn't look like he's going to be committing that just quite yet. He wants to be able to go back to his lane if he does have to teleport out. And I know, Mark, if I'm this Shen, right now I'm calling, hey, I have a window. If you want to go for a fight, now's the time to do it. And Brian's the kind of player who hears that as like, oh, I can get an extra person in my lane. Let's see if we can go for a dive.
Let's go! Let's go fight! Let's kill them!
Boom these kids. But not going to go for it just quite yet. But it still gives Yubi enough pressure across the map in order to get this first dragon started up.
And you have the global pressure from Shen. So even if you wanted to engage most of your members from TDE, you know that Jaffe cannot join. No unleashed teleport until 14 minutes. So Sejuani is just kind of left on the top side of the map, whereas Red can always step super far back, give that pressure. Dragon secured over for Yubi. What can TDE do in response?
Lot at this point, right? Not for this dragon. If they were trying to
Sure.
play for this, they needed to make different decisions earlier, hold a bit more priority in the bottom wave, using Caitlyn's Q a bit more actively on the minions. But from this position, everybody's just committed to try and farming it out. And Jaffe wants to make sure that he can actually get this underneath the turret, right? This is the counter punch. As soon as the wave comes back, now this is the spot where Shen says, I can't really teleport out. At best, I lose 2 plates. At worst, I get it stopped and am stuck here at the same time. There's a lot of different ways to play around the Shen, and Jaffe, at the very least, will be able to teleport back in. Oh my god. This cheeky bugger. He's faking a recall. You see that?
Yeah. But what does he
He
want to save
thinks
for?
I don't know. He thinks that Red thinks he's not there. So if Jaffe sticks around, I think he's trying to force a freeze by convincing Red that he didn't stick around. But if Red stays, he just wins the fight. Okay.
Huh. All
That
right.
I used to see this all the time with Rumbles back in like season 4, right? Like you
Hmm.
would do that and you would pretend not to be in the lane, and then after they pushed out, it'd be like, ah, equalizer, and run you down with the flamethrower. But he's not strong enough to like actually threaten the fight at this point. I think Jaffe was just trying to find a sneaky opportunity for a freeze.
Yeah. Kind of curious to see if Utility or Leaves is going to go for a Rift Herald advantage play. Right now, Yubi has the advantage. They have pushing waves in both mid and top at the moment. Seems like Utility is much more favored. He has an overall component advantage versus Leaves at the moment. And
Mhm.
Ragnarok kind of cancels out a lot of what
Oh,
Lilia wants to do. And this is a good chunk right now. You have a lot of pressure. Oh, Clovis going for the all in on the tower, but Zane with the sweep onto the tower, and oh baby, Zen Zen gets the outplay.
damn, the solo kill coming in the mid lane from Zen Zen, taking Clovis underneath the turret. And at the same time, this was going to be huge. It's going to allow them to actually contest the Rift Trail. And you saw Utility Monster is trying to start it, but won't be able to do so anymore. So this is a big upset, right? We were seeing Clovis or Civlock slowly building advantages. And in the bottom lane, we also see a kill, another 2v2 kill for Escape and Bob Joseph. Yes, please.
Can we get a replay? I need to see the replay. Oh,
Oh.
oh, oh.
Look, I don't know what the Wind Wall was used on, but it was clearly not used on the one ability that it needs to actually be used for, right? The hostile takeover is the big ticket item that you need to make sure it doesn't go across the team. And Bob Joseph finds a perfect opportunity, and suddenly there's Caitlyn Renata lane that we were worried might have a little bit of problems with Samira. It's gotten two 2v2 kills.
Hmm. Have we seen Jeff play Samira in the past? I know we haven't. I haven't been able to follow the league as much as you have, but for me, this is a newer pick in
He's
my recent experience.
every now and then, right? Like the whole thing that they do is they tend to build death balls, but it usually involves Jeff on something a little bit further back. I've
Mhm.
seen him play it like twice, but I don't know if they're actually in FOF matches. And now Escape and Bob Joseph still sticking around trying to create a little bit of pressure, not giving up this wave and the counter punch for everything else, but already Yubi's moving Civlock and Utility Monster down to potentially look for a dive.
Yeah, I think Yubi understands that Jeff is in a spot where he needs attention and pressure. This Samira is something that needs to pop off. Here comes Leaves, looking for the Lilting Lullaby, but already forced out. That Inferno Trigger got a lot of damage down onto Lilia. Already forced to flash out. Utility's going to block that ace in the hole from Escaped. But for the most part, no real net advantage gained in this lane.
Yeah, it's just a lot of big cooldowns actually expended. So the big payoff for this will probably come around the next dragon. We have another dragon spawning in 80 seconds, and Zenzen should be okay as he gets himself out. But now there's no flash on Escape, there's no flash on Leaves, and oh, it looks like it pays
Oh,
off immediately.
you know what? Fool him once, shame on you. Fool him twice, shame on him. But the third time around, looks like Jeff and Brian were able to get it done.
Oh,
Oh, they just caught Escape sleeping at the wheel.
yeah. Unfortunate. That's a Brian classic, just catching people as they try and go for a back. Now that will get them this wave underneath the turret, but Escape will be able to come back out, and the big worry that I have right now for TDE is that play is recreatable in the upcoming fight. Yes, there's a Gale Force on the Caitlyn. Yes, she has the 90 caliber net, but you need to be able to keep a lot of distance between you and the other side. And Jaffe walking towards the top side will have to use a teleport if he actually wants to be involved. Oh,
Oh,
what?
oh. All right.
Huh?
You know what? Yeah, let's get a replay on that. It looks like they went for the 2v1 dive, but Bob Joseph still had the bailout, and unfortunately, Jeff could not get the double execute in time before the turret eventually took him down.
Damn. That's a timing feels bad. And now Jeff, at least he still has his flash for trying to come back towards
Don't do
Dragon.
it,
And he
Barwell.
does, stopping Bob Joseph a little bit from going for the recall, but should be okay as he just walks out. What? No way.
Hmm.
Okay.
I wonder if Bob Joseph was like, I wonder if I can like convince Barwell to
Whoa.
pop Ragnarok here. Should be
Maybe,
fun.
but even then, like that's such a valuable ultimate that's now not available for the upcoming dragon fight. And everybody
Oh yeah.
was going to be back out on the map. So we'll see if that ends up coming back to bite them. But at the same time, Leaves not interested in contesting the dragon. He's instead devoting his time for the first Rift Herald of the game on the top half.
Good move, macro move. Already saw that utility monsters on the bottom side of the map. This is a free trade. You have massive advantage pushing in from Jaffe on the top side. The first two dragons going to go over to YUBI unless Escape can pull a Gumayushi here. No Varus, but a Caitlyn. Not quite.
Not quite. Doesn't do nearly as much damage as the Varus Q with the XQ, but still going to be a Herald for the Dragon. There's a small gold lead going over to TDE, and this is within the realms of how League of Legends has been played at the highest level for a long time. But Jaffe needs to be careful, dude.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Are you sure it's Jaffe that needs to be careful? I think Red is the one that's in trouble. It's going to be put to sleep thanks to that dosage of NyQuil from Leaves. One more swirling seed into the Q is going to be enough to take him down.
does he live? No. Going a little bit too far forward. Leaves will get traded 1-for-1, and a lot of back and forth plays all over this map.
More action. Inferno Trigger is popped. Bob Joseph on the run, already flashing away. And that ult early on, not being there. Oh, no way, they still make it out. You don't even need hostile takeover in these 2v2s. Bob Joseph and Escape pulling it off.
This is wild. This has been one of the strong points for YUBI over and over. And Zenzen here to clean up Brian as well. Can he get out? No.
Brian sees Zane approaching, says, A2 Zenzen, then I must fall. Brian saying will go down.
This is really good. This is a really exciting opening for the TDE side, right? Remember, we were looking at this roster being very compositionally safe for YUBI. They got almost everything they could have wanted, but they're going with a little bit of an experiment here with this mirror, not something that they have played nearly as often. And when their strong side, which has typically been Jeff Got Gamer and Brian saying, is now kind of crumbling as they have 4 deaths onto Jeff already, and a turret going to be given over towards Escape as well, suddenly this is a ton of gold that is not in the pockets of YUBI where it has been in almost all of their successful games.
I have an important update.
Update.
For those that are using the virtual bingo card, you should be able to unlock another one. Rift Herald was not used before 14 minutes.
Oh. All right. Well, there you go.
They still got first turret.
Yeah. I haven't seen either mid get blue buff yet, so that one's still on the table as well. But overall, this game's still going to be slightly in TDE's favor. The big fight will probably happen around the next dragon or the dragon after that, as Jaffe and Red just slamming their heads into each other, trying to prevent this from coming through. Now, if this was you and me, if this was you and me, Mark, I call for you to come dive this pig immediately after that trade. I'm like, what is this guy doing? But Utility Monster, not the same kind of bloodthirsty player that I know you like to be.
I'm glad you liked my joke, Josh. That one was just for you.
Perfect. I appreciate it. I thought I was the one who was supposed to be saying horny things.
Well, you have a whole best of 5 series to get one in on my bingo card at some point.
Perfect.
Yeah. I do want to bring up something. We got a chance to talk to both Clovis and Zane before this series started, and something that they both agreed on was that YUBI is favored in the team fights, but TDE has had better laning advantages throughout the regular season. So far, we're kind of seeing that come to fruition. And what I want to ask you at this point, 15 minutes into the game, 2,000 gold lead, is this still recoverable for YUBI?
It's still recoverable, but you're putting a lot more pressure onto Civilox on the Syndra this game than you would typically be expecting, right? He's usually like the second or third carry on the team, but in this game, because Samira is so far behind, you're suddenly looking at a situation where Syndra needs to be doing the bulk of the damage. He's got the Ludens, and he's still scaling up, and the worry that I have there is while Civilock will be doing plenty of damage, he's going up against a Caitlyn and a Azir. I don't know if he's going to be able to get in range to actually hit any of the backline members. And so suddenly, a lot of the traditional ways that you normally look to come into a game for YUBI are going to be based on the back of them just being better team fighters. And are they 4,000 gold better? I don't know.
That's tough.
Tough.
YUBI have to operate from a position where I imagine that you have to find pockets of the map where you have completely taken over vision and then just wait for picks, give yourself that number advantage, and then that way you can carry on a more advantageous team fight afterwards, I imagine.
Yeah, one of the win streams that they're going to need as well for that to work is for Red to be strong enough to actually consistently push Jaffe in. And that's been, you know, a bit on and off. And you actually see that the top lane turret goes down for, say, 20 first without Red ever.
Okay, potentially a pick here. Zane already forced to use a divide, but it pushes them back. Creates enough terrain and space that he gets out alive, not even having to use the flash.
But that's a lot of HP already gone. But at least all the flashes are back, right? We were expecting a big fight when Leaves and Escape didn't have their flash back up. But now all the summoners are available on basically both sides except for one flash from Jeff God Gamer. As we start setting up for this Hex Tech Dragon, TDE are here a little bit earlier, and I'm expecting Jeff to teleport to the mid lane shortly.
And while TDD to have the gold advantage going into this, you already pointed out Zane already taking a lot of damage, has Unleashed Teleport coming up, but I imagine that they want to have to fight for this dragon now. They cannot let YUBI continue stacking up these dragons. They're too away from full. Here comes Barwell, but he pops the stasis, giving Red the ultimate front door entrance, and just like that, the Infernal Trigger getting massive damage onto the backline. They've already taken out the bot lane from TDE, and Zane, because he was chunked out from below, before, he can't do any much more, and this is a fight that YUBI somehow pull out.
Yeah, we actually have to praise Jeff a lot there. We were talking about the win wall before. It blocks not only the hostile takeover coming out from Bob Joseph, but it also drops the lullaby coming out from Leaves. Those are two key teamfight ultimates that are just not able to do anything in that fight. And so suddenly, if you're just missing two ultimates and you don't have an Azir, it's a huge win coming out for YUBI. They get themselves the third dragon. While watching the game, keep your eyes on Jeff as he throws out the window, right? A hostile takeover is blocked. We also saw in the same spot, it was harder to see, but Leaves lifts up his little staff to try and get the sleep down, not hitting anybody because it is a projectile as it goes out to all the different members.
Really, really solid sequence of events from the side of YUBI, understanding that they had that health advantage despite the gold disadvantage that they were walking into this fight with. They knew what their win condition was, and they knew that this was a forced situation. Oh, hold up.
Okay, I think. Oh, misses. Clovis!
Clovis?
It was a bait, elaborate bait.
Honestly, if I'm Jaffe, I'm going to be a little upset about that one. It seems so close, and then you just get outplayed by pressing one button.
Oh, Red getting outplayed a little bit here. Not a whole lot for him to do as he does go down, but this has been a kind of textbook showcasing of YUBI having a better understanding of tempo generally across the map. And now as we see TDE moving in force in the mid lane, Jeff God Gamer also picks up the bottom lane turret, and what was the 4,000 gold lead for TDE has been evened up, and YUBI still has all the dragons to catch Zane.
Oh, Zane still has flash to work with, but he creates enough space with it. As the summoner spell down, having already used a divide, the rest of TDE are trying to burn down this Rift Herald without any intervention from YUBI. Should be able to do so without any interference.
That was a Brian hook right there. I was looking for it. There's not a lot of support to just kind of go for that fight because there's no follow-up to it. But Brian's like, yeah, we killed this guy. And the great thing is he's right way more often than he has any right to be. But now that Rift Herald gets picked up for TDE, they still need to blow open this mid lane turret, open up the map a little bit so that they can take some of these better fights. But they also have the timer marking down towards the mark. 3.5 minutes left before the Hextech Soul comes out onto the map. And they haven't been good so far about setting up for them.
And that's going to be the scary thing for TDE, right? I mean, you are now staring down the barrel of a YUBI about to accomplish Hex Tech Soul. They didn't get a chance to really stop them on the first two dragons. Jaffe still has a tower here, so he should be safe.
Okay.
So TDE now have to find a way to manage not to get chunked out before getting into the next dragon fight and set up that superior vision control so that they can figure out how to deal with Jeff's wind wall ability. I think it's Blade Whirl.
I have no idea. I believe you.
Yeah, we're just gonna call it Blade Whirl. We'll accept it.
Oh,
knock up.
Okay.
No stun follow up from Civil Lock doesn't quite connect. Rift Herald connects into tier 2 turret, or tier 1, I should say, knocking it down. And this is gonna bleed into more vision control. There's still 2.5 minutes before that fourth dragon comes up.
Yeah. The big thing that I'm looking at right now, Mark, is the way that the composition for TDE scales. They have Azir, they have Kaylin. Both these champions are crazy good on 3 items. But they're both going to be on maybe 2 items for this upcoming fight. And you see it's Gale Force and Rapid Fire King. There's not a lot of damage that Escape's actually going to do.
He's in that Caitlyn power trough.
Power trough, like a piggy. It's where you eat out of. It's not where you want to be most of the time.
Oh. I was thinking of the cyanide one. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Nipples on a man.
Yep. Useful as nipples on a man.
Not going to be able to do a whole lot, right? You need another item, so Bob Joseph will be able to get himself out for now. But that's the other thing, right? There are still a lot of tools, but actually all 5 ultimates from TDE can be blocked by the Blade Whirl, right? You have the ultimate coming out from Jackfield and just get destroyed. Leaves cannot get a sleep off. Zane, his Emperor's Divide just gets stopped as they try and find Utility Monster.
Nice chunk of damage, but there's still a minute to play for before this dragon comes out, so I don't imagine this chunk will get too much. Right now, the only thing that they can do is somehow push aggressively into the jungle, and they're already getting a little bit of that done.
Yeah. I do really like the fact that TDE are trying to set up. They need to make sure that they get the mid lane pushing and the bottom lane pushing before the fight actually starts. They have great vision control already in the eastern quadrant of the map, but they now need to make sure that they do not give it up. And I think they're there a little bit too early, right? This bottom lane wave is going to start pushing back towards them in just a sec, and they're losing control of the mid lane.
Does Brian look for leaves here? Escape could be out of position, but they're going to target right onto Zane. But he has enough distance created that he gets out alive, and Brian is chunked. 30 seconds before this dragon spawns. Brian needs to be able to get out and respawn quickly and walk on over. No death charge available for this next fight.
Yeah, but he's got the Hextech portals. He will actually be here, and so this trap line needs to get set up. There was a window because Jeff had used the Blade Whirl before any ultimates came out that they could have potentially punched that, but they didn't know. They need to be very careful with that ability. And now Brian saying, even though he doesn't have his ultimate, is back on the map, and he is so good at finding crazy hooks.
Bottom wave set up an advantage for YUBI. Red has the 10 to the top side wave. Dragon has spawned. Utility Monster has an entrance through the bottom half of the river, and the rest of YUBI encircling through the blue jungle.
Yeah, this is a really tough position right now as Jaffe tries to find his way back into the map. I would not be surprised if he portals right over to where Brian's saying he is, but instead joins the rest of his team, and I really love this setup from YUBI.
But they have vision on the dragon. They're going to start up the fight. Watch for Jeff. If Jeff can find a
Brian's
great
dead.
Infernal Trigger, but he's pushed out of the fight right now. Utility Monster's just attempting to burn down the dragon, but Leaves takes him out with his own damage. Bob Joseph's finally waiting to use the ultimate after Jeff had already used the Blade Whirl. That is an easy death sentence for them. Red is the last man standing from the side of YUBI, but it could just be TDE cleaning up.
The chaotic fight all over the place is something that TDE cleans up. They win so much of it. My favorite part is actually, if we can go back to it, Escape and Civil Lock kill each other on the left side of the fight. Just by themselves. But we'll take another look at this. I really like the setup from YUBI. They're creating a lot of situations where the limited front line from TDE can't protect them from all of the different angles. And as they start to come in, it just gets a little bit too chaotic, and we're really missing out on the depth charge that Brian had to use earlier in order to take some of these fights. But as you see, Utility Monster finds his way in. The problem is he doesn't get close enough to actually get through Zen's Emperor's Divide here. You'll notice he gets pushed back, and that's crucial 2-3 seconds where he's not doing damage, and he commits for the dragon. It was at 4,000 HP. Utility Monster, I know you're trying to get the soul here, but you got an entire fight you got to take.
Utility Monster went for the high risk, high reward play, figured out that the play was lost. I want to give a special shout out to Jaffe in that fight as well. Completely stuffing Jeff and preventing him from getting into the fight, committing pretty much his entire spell rotation into that Samira. And by the time Jeff joined the fight, it was already too late.
Already too late, yeah. I mean, we got to see that TDE, their team fight ends up coming to fruition as long as you can get through the Blade Roll. But this gives them a bit more of a buffer right now that the soul has been pushed back another 4 minutes. That's time for Escape. It's time for Zen to get onto their third item. When they actually get to 3 items, it's almost impossible, I think, for YUBI to win the game from that position unless they have this Hextech Soul. And now, as well, we're going to be flipping the play action towards the top side of the map. YUBI are not out, but they want to take fights sooner than later.
And it's actually pretty miraculous that TDE were able to bypass that point because, as you noted before, Escape being in that power trough, you know, Caitlyn on 2 items, just gonna not be nowhere near as lethal as Samira could have been. But by having been able to nullify the other marksman, we're now at a point where by the time the next dragon comes up, it's gonna be 3 items for both of these main carries from TDE. Is pick the... Oh. Goodbye, Bob Joseph.
Uh-oh.
There's a lot more. Infernal Trigger committed onto Jaffe. Leaves. Gonna hit him down with a lilting lullaby. Jeff goes down. And now it's up to Zen and Escape, who are now making their way over to join in the fight. Civil Lock and Utility Monster still have enough damage to be able to pack through them. But Red is losing so much HP. And without the front line needed... Oh god, Jaffe flashing on forward, getting the slowdown. Zen wants to pursue, and there he goes. The shuffle allowing him to just take out 2 members from the side of YUBI. And this should be a Baron over to them.
And we see what happens when TDE can set up their front lines, right? As long as Jaffe only has one angle he needs to protect Zenzen from, he can do that. If Leaves just needs to be in one spot to make sure that Escape can hit, he can do that. They are able to set all of their battle lines up, and perfectly, Bob Joseph is even alive by the time this Baron comes to fruition. 5,000 gold lead all of a sudden. We'll take another look at this fight. But the big thing to notice here is even though Bob Joseph goes down, he holds the attention of their opponents for long enough that the rest of the team can come flooding in.
I imagine that in comms, Bob Joseph's like, guys, they blew everything on me. This fight is already won. Like,
yeah, you're scared. You're scared. Yeah, I mean, you see this, right? And Leaves is already in a pretty decent position. Zenzen is already hitting from the backside. And while Zenzen does have to commit his E just to reposition in his fight and can't use an early Emperor's Divide, there's no threat onto the backline. The amount of damage that Zenzen Azir does in this fight is absolutely ridiculous because YUBI go a little bit too far forward thinking that they have a pick. And finally, 20 seconds later, when Zenzen has his E back up, he can go back in and find the 2 extra kills.
You know, while that play still overall is net worthy for TDE, Zane would be the type of player who would go, man, if I could just flash a little bit forward to the right, we could have gotten them all, you know? Even in the moment, Zane is always going to be thinking about how the play could have been better for him. And that's something that has been pretty awesome about his character over the course of this entire season. Zane was talking about, before the series started, that when they played against SLR, it was a super close series, 3-2. That game 5, as you were telling me and informing me before, they had the advantage in the early game, and they chucked it. And for him, that has pretty much been the only disappointing part about the entire season so far. And he and the rest of TDD are super hungry to not only blast through UB, just to get back at SLR and beat them in Grand Finals.
We'll see if they can do that. They still need to take down the rest of this best of 5, but this is already a good start. That's no Blade Whirl.
Hostile takeover. Zones off Jeff to the left, and that means he is prime target for that Glacial Prison over the wall. No Samira. That's 4-5.
Can I make a prediction real quick,
Rafa? Yeah. Go.
I don't think we're going to see any more Samira in the rest of this event.
Yeah, I will have to agree.
Now, the one thing that'll come through is I think, the expectation is that Ultravox will be coming in for Game 2. Wasn't able to get off work early enough to go into Game 1. That's why we do have Escape coming through as this first turret goes down. They might think that they can actually punish Ultravox's laning phase, but right now they already find themselves in a pretty desperate position. The only real way for Yubi to come back in is a miracle fight around the next phase.
They pull in Leaves, but Brian already loses about half of HP for the engage. And this turret is going down. Jaffe's going to preemptively engage, buying space for the rest of TDE to knock down that turret. They go forward. Beautiful 4-man pushback from Civil Lock. It's going to be enough to deter them from taking that inhibitor, but the base has been breached for TDE.
Yeah, that's really big, right? One of the problems that you were always going to have was the wave clear coming out from Syndra, but now you're not worried about that. The base is already broken. You can rely on minions to create extra space on the board. And Rafa, we have our next fight coming up. We have it coming around this dragon, and crucially, let's go back not to the gold. I want to see the items. I think Zenzen and Escape have found 3 items. They're now doing a truckload of damage, but Escape hasn't actually backed just quite yet. Zenzen opting to go in for the cheaper 3rd item with the Void Staff in order to make sure they can get to the 3rd item before the actual fight, but neither of them completed. This is winnable for Yubi. It's very tough, but it's not impossible for them to win, and Jaffe just goes.
They're looking at Jeff. Blade World has been popped, and they know that hostile takeover in this choke point would be absolutely deadly. Yubi knows it's best to back off from that entrance point, but they lose Brian as punishment.
And now as they try and find the way back in, they know this is kind of their fight or die moment, right? I know we're not on the other side of the map, But Red still has the Stand United, can look to join, but if they give up this Dragon, they don't scale into the rest of the game. I feel like they still need to send this Hail Mary.
Yeah, as you noted before, this is probably the last Dragon point before Escape and Zenzen hit that 3 out of break point. And that is where Civillock and Jeff would be eclipsed, not in just damage, but, I mean, we're already seeing problems of the range being a difficult thing in the examples of the last 2 fights that we've seen.
Yeah. Already, Zenzen and Escape, we already know as long as they have their front line in front of them, it's going to be impossible for the rest of you to deal with. But I do like this overloading one side of the map. They are sending Zenzen back to try and deal with Red, but Zenzen doesn't have a teleport, and YUBI does have the Stand United available. There's some semblance of an opportunity for them to try and take this fight, but Civillock is just now back.
Gonna join up to the fight. Brian looking for the Hex Flash. Unfortunately, the wall is a little too thick. Zenzen's going to be tending to that top side of the map. As you called it out, no Unleashed teleport. So TDE need to be careful about how far they overextend, because Red is no longer in vision range of Zenzen, and he cannot prevent him from joining.
So everybody going to be backing out a little bit. We still see about a 5,000 gold lead coming out for TDE. The Baron didn't really expand it a whole lot, but they pushed back the game at least another 5 minutes. And so Infinity Edge has just been completed on Escape. This guy is now doing truckloads of damage. He can shoot them with his gun from a mile away. The favorite part. And so, again, this is going to be the big thing. And I feel like this is one of the hallmarks of a lot of YUBI games, especially early on in this season and last season. It wasn't uncommon for them to have games that went to 7 dragons. That's why it was on my bingo card in the first place. I think we're probably going to get to 6 dragons this time, because I'm expecting the make or break fight to happen around there. And it's important to note that YUBI need to win 2 of them, whereas TDE realistically only need to win 1 in order to end the game.
Jaffe already in the vicinity, looking at Jeff. Key thing for TDE is, as we've noted time and time again already in this game, bait out the Blade Whirl, and it's free money onto Jeff.
Yeah. One thing that is important to note, though, is that pretty much across the board, the only person who's doing a better job farming for TDE is actually Escape right now on the Caitlyn. About 40 up over Jaffa with 7 deaths already on the God Gamer. It's been a little bit tough. And now Red on the far side of the map. TDE trying to force the issue.
Brian's going to go in. Who will Red teleport to with that Stand United? Will be Brian to save his life. Shield has been popped. It looks like YUBI are going to try and play off of this fight again. Brian looking for a nice engage on the leaves, but no one's touching Zenzen, no one's touching Escape, and they're making the takeover. And hostile takeover is massive, and you just see YUBI tearing themselves apart, and that's just flashes galore. Zane coming in, finally gets the shuffle he was looking for all game. He won't even go down, because it's just that too clean from the side of TDE, and that'll be game 1 going over to them.
And huge props to Bob Joseph in the last fight, right? You saw as soon as the Blade Whirl falls, he throws out the hostile takeover, catches 4 members in such a tight corridor, they have to leave, and it ends up being a great game coming out for TDE. It's a little bit rough early on, but they really came together later on in the game. The one thing that they need to do in order to make this a little bit cleaner, take some of those dragons a little bit earlier so you aren't at a desperate fight for every single one of the dragons.
Yeah, it's kind of like the idea of not doing your homework until the very last minute, right? You know, you just because you don't want to have to like do all of the homework right at once super early on, but you need to do a little bit of it until until the deadline, because otherwise you get to that very stressful point where your carries are not quite strong enough that they eclipse those of YUBI, and there is still a very real chance for YUBI to come back in that game, which they demonstrated a couple times in the mid game.
So that's going to be game 1 for us. You are seeing that it is going to be Zenzen doing the most damage in the game, but realistically, I feel like almost everybody contributed a lot to that victory. The big thing that we're going to have to look at, though, is how much of this draft is going to be coming back, because we know that in the TESLR series, there was a lot of adaptation, whereas the YUBI versus YOLO series that we had previously, basically every single game was entirely different draft. So I don't know how much this game is going to tell us about the rest of it, but it is a big confidence boost already coming out for TDE.
And I think it just goes to show how much YUBI are going to have to change up the effective range of their backline, because once it got to that late game, even though that we we know both from what the teams have talked about in their regular season that YUBI normally favored for their team fighting, but when it comes to situations like this, it's going to have to make them think about which types of carries they're going to draft for the remainder of the series. You already called it out. Probably not seeing another Samira from Jeff, but we know that he has a deep champion pool, and there's plenty of picks for him to resort to.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways for Jeff to have a lot of success. We know he's a big Caitlyn player as well. Maybe he'll even go for the booger picker Caitlyn with the grass to the undying if he can convince the rest of the team that it is Lowalytics approved. But for now, I think that's going to be it. We're going to take a short break while we wait for the next game of TDE versus YUBI in order to try and find their way to Grand Finals.
Cause you
We got game two for UB taking on TDE in our lower finals of the Mythic League. And if you've missed out on game one, well, TDE are already off to the races here, Josh.
Yeah, they already picked up game one, and it is important to note that they will not be repeating the escape performance. They are going to be bringing back in Ultravox. It's Spencer on Spencer action coming in the
That's
bottom
hot.
lane. Or not, maybe not action. It was playing the Spencer role. Is maybe the better way to put it because we do have one Spencer leaving and another Spencer coming back in. But unfortunately, Mark, it looks like my bingo is probably going to be a little bit ruined based on the fact that a lot of the champions that I put in to my bingo card are champions that they don't want to see, right? The Urgot that I have being played for Yubi is been banned already. The Belveth that is required for the Fishy
No
Fishy is
fishy,
taken off the
fishy.
table. There is
Unlucky.
and the craziest thing, or the saddest thing, there's no Annie ban. The one character that I said was going to get banned instead of like actually just played, because I thought this UB Maokai was going to be a free space, because I don't know how strong it actually is. It's just something that UB is going to first pick every time it's up, you know?
Yeah. And I think TD are just at the point where they recognize that it doesn't matter what happens to the Maokai in the early game, just the utility of it in itself, whether
Yeah,
it
it's a
goes to the
monster.
jungle. Yeah, true. Yeah, that was not intentional, but I'm glad
Well, it
you.
was intentional from me.
But right, I mean, this is essentially a triple flex. I mean, God forbid if Clovis was forced to play a mid lane. I
Oh
don't think.
man. I
I,
he'd consider it. He's one of the psychopaths that would actually consider it, but we have another incredibly strong backline coming out for TDE. The Azir making a repeat appearance, and Morgana Sejuani very quickly slammed. So this is going to be a tough bottom lane for Ultravox and Bob Joseph to navigate. Now, we do know that Escape, we generally credit him with being a bit of a stronger laner than Ultravox, but Ultravox is also the kind of AD carry who's going to pop off in fights, but he's also more likely to just randomly die at the beginning of a fight, right? So you have like this very large discrepancy in the way that they like to play, and it could be a huge boon for TDE, but it could also be a big part for them to struggle. And so far, the one thing that I was looking at before, it's another bingo space. TDE is well on the way to drafting themselves no frontline again.
oh baby. Well, let's see what Jaffe's got in his wheelhouse this time around. This Sejuani is still a flex between red and utility monster. Uh, technically, or wait a minute.
I'm waiting.
Okay. Sorry, I had like
Aneurysm.
yeah, because for some reason I thought that they already played it, but that was Jaffe that played
It was
the
Jaffe.
Sejuani last time around. Uh, surprising so far that neither UB or TDE has allowed their top laners to opt into a full-on split push duel fighter on fighter action because I mean, game one so far given us both tank on tank action.
Yep. I mean, that's the way that Yubi likes to play, right? Yubi loves putting red on some kind of meatball champion up in the top lane. Jaffe is generally a little bit more free to explore his orientation on whether he wants to go towards the tanks or whether he wants to go towards the carries and actually have an opportunity to play more aggressively. But this time around is going to be waiting to see what they can actually do. And again, TDE, one of the things that I really find entertaining about them is none of their players, I'll say this, the only player that I think really knows how to frontline for the team is Jaffe. And he really likes to play a lot of these sideline carries. And so with the Sejuani gone, I'm trying to think of what the next tank you would even put Jaffe on in order to allow him to be a frontline for the team. Well, it's not that.
Yeah,
That leaves
definitely not
another
Sona.
unique champion for Bob Joseph.
I think Bob Joseph is competing against Brian for most unique picks throughout the season. I
Yeah, he
think
only has playoffs to work with.
Brian is tied
Oh,
with. Oh,
hovered
wait,
but not picked.
wait. There's no way.
There's no way.
Unless you pick Morgana
Yeah,
mid.
okay,
That sounds
perfect,
breach.
perfect. Yumi
Okay.
hovered but not picked. I'm marking it off my bingo sheet.
Does that count?
Yes! What do you mean does that count?
Does it actually say Yumi hovered but not picked in your bingo?
Yes!
Oh shit. Okay. Big
Yeah.
brain Josh. It just the respect to Yumi
No,
hover.
Utility
I
Monster
wonder.
hates Brian's Yumi.
Oh
He
man.
actually thinks he's really bad at it, but Brian loves playing it so much, and I think Brian likes playing it more for the meme than he actually, like, enjoys playing it, right? It's just this little cap because Brian is so good at like starting fights. When you rip out all of Brian's agency, it suddenly makes him a much worse
Oh
player.
my god, you actually have Yumi hovered but not picked?
Yeah.
Incredibly based. Good shit, Josh. And oh! All right, this is a throwback. Rex Regalis actually has some personal experience with Utility Monsters Kha'Zix because 1 week I was gone. And so Utility Monster had
True.
this sub for our team, and he popped off on the Kha'Zix game. So
And he
this is a
stole
game
Zenzin's blue buff.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, that's a throwback. Maybe Zinzin will remember that one. But now we do finally have like a pseudo frontline coming out for set. And yet again, we have TDE with a much stronger scaling composition than YUBI, but it's not quite as obvious how this time, right? The big thing that you always look at is one, who does a lot more damage later on. And the second thing you ask is, can these champions hit because they have the range? And this time, both of them can kind of hit because of their range. And then you start looking at the support parts of the composition. And this is where later on in the game, Sona is way more likely to be useful than the Morgana will. And that's probably going to be the difference maker if we start going towards these late game team fights. But we also have to see if Jaffe can play the front line for his team because they need one to actually go for some of these flanks or to create pressure in the side lanes.
And I imagine that Jacob will be incentivized to go Ross this game because you are kind of lacking just meatballs to soak up a lot of the
Yeah.
damage and a lot of the attention in the front line. And Ross, we've had firsthand experience against playing against Leaves Ross in the past before,
Yeah.
where it just gets so frustrating to try and lock him down. And when you
Yeah.
consider the amount of crowd control you have from Yubi, it's really dependent on Sejuani reliably.
Yeah. And I'll be real, generally in the games where Leaves goes Rost, I kind of hate it. Not because I think he's bad at playing it, but because the games where the team convinces him to go Red Cane, he's sitting there like, they're saying, we want you to be the front line, but he doesn't really front line, you know? Like, he creates a lot of space for himself, and he does a lot of work for Leaves, but he's not necessarily creating space for the back line. And so I'm kind of curious to see what he goes. I would really love to see just kind of a pop-off game from him as he just goes for the Shadow Assassin and just blows up Civil Lock and Jeff Got Gamer.
Mm.
Minions have spawned.
Oh, are we
Hold on,
getting some in-game trash talk?
Maybe I can't read it.
Give him a red orb, please.
Yeah, that's it. That's in character.
Comes for the pool.
I am just marking that Bob Joseph has played 2 champions in 2 games, so that I do remember that he will play a unique champion probably every game this series, and possibly also between last series and this one. I didn't watch all of them. I don't remember all the champions that he played up against SLR, but it was one of the things that he mandated that he would be able to do in Season 5. He's like, I will only play if I can play a unique champion in every season game.
That's so stressful for the rest of TDE. It's like, hey, you had a really great Renata game in game 1. Yeah,
play
don't
again?
care.
Yeah, sucks to suck. Other team gets an extra ban without having done anything. But already the Caitlyn Morgana a much stronger lane than the Samira Nautilus, just because it has so much more range early on in the game. And I love the fact that Ultravox and Bob Joseph has so far decided to split the CS evenly, but Ultravox being a little bit greedy there. Come on, you got to give that to the support. Sona's the better scaling champ.
Did you just like tap into their comms and say exactly word for word what Bob Joseph was saying? I feel like
that seems like the kind of thing he would say. So, love Mason, Bob Joseph. He's one of the players that he will win you the game or lose you the game basically by himself. But he also has one of the most useless comms I have ever heard from any player ever. And that's when he goes, you're scared? You're scared? And I'm like, am I not supposed to be scared? Are you telling me like a true fact? Or am I supposed to like back up because I'm supposed to be scared and I'm not, right? Like, it is so hard to know in the moment. And it's one of those things I've told him over and over, stop using this comm, do something a little bit more specific. But at the same time, we are going a little bit back to what we were expecting from the junglers. Both of them is going to be full clearing instead of trying to make something happen early on.
Utility Monster not looking for any, I don't want to say interesting plays, because it was a cheesy path to give an advantage over to Red in the early game, and it gave them a lot of push advantage. Unfortunately, they never really got to translate that into the mid game that they're looking for because the bottom lane advantage had been so upsided by Leaves interference. But so far, we've had a very relatively clean game. And I want to go back to what both of these teams have expressed about each other, that TDE feel like they are better in the laning phase and getting advantages, but come team fights later, that is where they are usually outmatched by YUBI.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that YUBI has been fantastic at as the hook lands.
Ultravox forced to both use both Flash and Cleanse there. Great look from Brian. And I imagine that Utility Monster will want to stick around after this crab and potentially look for another repeat gank.
I'd be surprised if he goes for the dive, right? He's not the kind of player who will do that. This is a bit more in line with what we see from Utility Monster, just going in to try and counter jungle, really values farm, whereas Leaves, he went for the gank up top, is forcing the teleport out of red, becomes mid, looking for more orbs.
Civillock forced to ghost away. That's a summoner down. Zen will now have an easier time to get the push reliably for Leaves, but Leaves is going to help Zane get this push into mid lane, giving him that better backing timer. And so Utility Monster not going to get punished on this counter invade, so a little bit of farm. But look at this, Leaves delaying his recall timer because he's going to look for the punish on the top side.
Yeah, now they're buying the bottom side, but we got to look at Kane top slide, see if he actually gets anything off. He will be getting a couple more orbs off of this, but there should be no way he actually wins this fight. Yeah, there's a stun, and his Leaves go for a little bit more. No more orbs, but still rapidly stacking up these orbs. But the worry that I currently have is they're all red orbs, right? That says to me that they're likely going for the, the Ross Kane as we were talking about before. But I've already said I'm not a huge fan of that. He's really going to have to prove that he knows how to play frontline for the rest of the team in order to make this worth it, instead of being another flanker in the upcoming fights. Oh, and I am getting confirmation from production that at least in the previous series, Bob Joseph did play 5 unique champions, but he has not played, or he has played Sona against SLR. He's just now playing Sona again. So, not unique between both series, but at least he's playing unique champions this series.
Within this series. Okay.
Yeah.
And Bob Joseph's kind of looking for it. Oh, man. This is such a brutal laning phase. And now
Punch him
Jappy
with your
being
god.
able to hit level 6. Looks like Silverlock was trying to go for the clear mid-wave with ultimate strat. Unfortunately, Zen is a little bit healthier on the resources at the moment. And now Silverlock normally...
Normally what?
Actually, you know what? Before I start spreading false information on the internet, how does this Victor Azir matchup usually go? Because I usually just look at it as a handshake.
Yeah, you mostly just like poke each other from really long range, and Victor's laser is better than Azir's Q for most of the game because it has a stronger base damage than the Azir Q. So it's mostly just them like lasering and soldiering each other from really far. But the fact that Clovis is a little bit behind is mostly due to the fact that he got pushed off of a couple waves by Leaves. We know that Zen, like neither of these are particularly strong laning mids. They get most of their value later on in the game, but it is exciting to me that so far Zen has been getting the better of Civillock and actually taking down Clovis earlier in a solo kill, and now also pushing him around in terms of CS.
We're already starting to see how much the two junglers are really playing to strong sides of the map at the moment. Counter jungling has been in full effect by Utility Monster since the 4th minute of the game. Leaves finally buying into it, realizing that Utility Monster is relying so much on the fact that Jeff and Brian are constantly shoving in this bottom lane duo. I imagine that YUBI are in full favor to start up this first dragon.
Yeah, but look at this. Leaves also coming up towards top side. This will be the 3rd time that he actually potentially goes for this gank, and now kind of showcasing where he is, but I don't know if Red would have picked up on that. Oh, he does see him on the control ward, so he doesn't need to have all these little context clues. He just knows that he's there. Okay. Okay, more red orbs.
More red orbs for sure.
I wonder how close he is. That's one of the things that I always hate about being a caster, is like I never know exactly how close Leaves is. I think he's probably about like 2/3 of the way through.
Yeah, man, that should be an updated thing for Spectate client, just to see like what's Kane like transformation meter.
I mean, Riot's been very vocal about the fact that they do not want Kane players to know exactly how much they need to fight so that they can't optimize it, right? It's one of those like little things that they always try and do, but we missed first blood on the far side of the map. No cleanse, no flash from Ultravox. Does mean he goes down. I imagine this is probably a bind trap combo.
And unfortunately for Sona as well, this is a very squishy support. We talked about the scaling advantage that you're going to get later and later on to the game. During the laning phase, though, this is where Caitlyn and Morgana reign supreme. And I was going to ask you how much YUBI we're going to get off of laning advantages apart from just a couple of turret plates. But if they're starting to rack up kills, this is going to be a bigger disadvantage that TDE can't just ignore for the rest
Yeah.
of the game.
In general, you should be looking at Caitlyn and Morgana in this lane to probably be up about 20 CS and about 2 or 3 plates. But this could be a kill. Does he go? He doesn't.
Not
But
quite.
yeah, about 2 plates and about 20 CS, right, is generally what you're going to be looking at. They are up 3 plates, a kill, and about 20 CS. It's going to expand to about 25 after this. So this is a pretty big lead coming out from Jeff and Brian, and kind of punching on the fact that Ultravox not able to kind of navigate his way with Bob Joseph quite as well as Escape was.
You know, at least on the flip side for TDE, they're getting a massive advantage in the top side. And there's the sweep. Bob Joseph runs on over just so that he can get a little bit of that assist money. Leaves is going to cash in on a kill.
And another great play, Zen using the Emperor's Divide to knock Sivlock around the Ghost and the Flash still up, not expecting the gank to come through. Now, Lee's starting to showcase his play a little bit more on the rest of the map, right? Not just spending his time putting red behind, is actually going to be able to get a couple more blue orbs and maybe try and transition towards the Shadow Assassin. The one thing we haven't really talked about, Mark, is the fact that Jaffe has a huge advantage already over red. Not necessarily the same number of plates and probably not as far ahead of red as Jeff is over Ultravox, but still, that's a huge flip of threat.
Okay. Nice look from Utility Monsters. Just gonna... I couldn't see if he could collect on the Harvey stack for himself, but this Cosmos is getting to the point where in the mid game, it's going to be super strong, and squishy members like Ultravox and Zenzen are going to have to be careful, but Leaves wanting to tango with the bug. Isn't transformed yet, so just collecting more orbs for himself and knowing that he had a window in terms of ultimate ability advantage.
Yeah, and going to be thinking better about trying to make that happen as another kill. Bob Joseph getting caught again. Sure, this has to be a binding combo, right? There's no way that he ends up dying without Flash otherwise. This time, they're going to be getting the entire turret. Suddenly a 2,000 gold lead already going over for YUBI. Going to take another look at it, or rather just Bob Joseph trying to run around. Well, watch this. Where's the binding?
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd that slink through the first minion and yet clip Bob Joseph on the right side? Like, did you see that?
It was good. Yeah, this is one of those times where Bob Joseph thinks very highly of himself as a player and not particularly highly of anybody else as a player. This is definitely one of those spots where he had such a good first game playing the Renata into the Nautilus, but that's such a strong matchup for us. Now, not giving Brian the proper amount of respect, finds themselves in a pretty big deficit. And what we said before, you win by Bob Joseph and you lose by Bob Joseph. We'll see if this is going to be enough of a lead for you to ignore the big drop that Caitlyn normally goes through, because they're already at a Mythic completed at before 11 minutes.
So now, for the side of TDE, you're really looking at, like, what, Jaffe, I guess this is top 3-man side to be the difference maker in those fights. If you can find Jeff and be able to take him down with a sweep despite flash advantage, oh, that's his Gale Force down. Just looking to trunk out Ultravox right before this dragon.
Yeah, I mean, he will be able to reset, and he will have the HP coming out from Bob Joseph if they do choose to stick around. The big thing here is that there's no Mythics completed on the side of TDE for this upcoming fight. I actually don't know if they will try and contest this, which kind of goes back to some of the issues that we were looking at them earlier on, right? They gave up 3 Dragon at the beginning of last game, and now as Brian starts hunting for Zenzen, not going to find him just quite yet, but they should be able to look for him at this blue buff, and that will be disastrous beginning.
Zenzen, I don't think is going to get a chance to flash out of the way in time. That binding into trap combo is just way too long on the CC chain. And now, this is the part where YUBI can start looking to just really hammer in this mid-game advantage off of the sole advantage that Jeff and Brian got through the laning phase.
Yeah, great stuff already coming out from YUBI. This is a bit more textbook to how they played in, I think it was Season 4, when they were really looking at a lot of the play coming around their bottom lane, when they were still playing with Freelancer in particular, who really took a big backseat a lot of the time. But now we'll see if Leaves and Jaffe can topple this top lane turret. They still have the Rift Herald. This wave is coming in. And Leaves going to be picking up the blue buff. Where does he go after that? That's the big question.
I imagine that Leaves probably wants to look for plates with this Rift Herald on the top side of the map before. He's drifting over towards it. Okay, that should be the play. Jaffe's going critically low. Does he still have the shield? I guess he doesn't need it. Oh my goodness. The Triumph healing, the base HP regeneration from Set. Nasty stuff.
Crazy. And now what we're seeing is a bit of a trade. Utility Monster spending a lot of time sitting here in this bush, waiting to see if either of them walk over towards that side of the map. But as we see the top lane turret likely going down, is also going to be the destruction of the mid lane turret. And Utility Monster just looking.
Goodbye, Bob Joseph.
Rutro. Bob Joseph.
Utility Monster can just scare them off here. I mean, he has enough damage on this. Oh, he doesn't even have a first item spike yet. Oh, Brian? Here comes Utility Monster trying to jump in, but Leaves shows up, having transformed into Rost and resets. But no, and Jeff hitting him with the style points as well. Ace. Oh, that wasn't even an ace the hole. That was just an empowered auto, and then flashing the Mastery 7.
Yeah, good stuff already coming out. Jeff God Gamer with 4 kills. 4 of his team's 5 kills already picked up. And now trying to use the excess tempo that they have with both Leaves and Zenzen still on the board to pick up this mid lane turret. But this game is rapidly getting out of hand. And uh-oh. Is Jaffe gone? Looks like he disconnected, but he's going back towards the top side, so we will be all okay. At least they get the turret in the mid lane, but we're already seeing that this mismatch that we're seeing from Brian Sang and Jeff God Gamer are totally blowing up the game. And because TDE are leaving Ultravox and Bob Joseph to their own devices, the situation is going to get worse before it gets better.
And I imagine TDE are just kind of saying, listen, laning phase kind of sucked. Well, look at our top laner. Look at our jungler. Look at our mid in some respect as well. We all almost have mythics completed for each 3 of us. I think Leaves off of that kill should have enough gold once he recalls to complete that Gore Drinker as well. So this is a decent fighting combo, and you have more than enough ways to get onto Jeff, barring the fact that he has no flash, to maybe look for that shutdown.
They can try. That's going to be the tough part, though, right? Because he still has a lot of mobility. He has the Gale Force. He has the Caliber Net. He's got a flash sometimes. He's also got the black shield, and now Lee's looking for his way in, but look at the chunks.
Already taking a third of his HP. Jaffe goes in. Freeze frame. He gets the flash in. Jeff right into the combo. Nicely done from TDE. The shutdown goes over to Leaves on the jungle. And now all that gold, the swing, it's still overall advantage for YUBI, but TDE are coming right back.
Double bruise is coming immediately forward. I don't think the black shield is there in time. Jeff gets yeeted back into the rest of the team, and if that's where he ends up being, you know, if he ends up frontlining, it's a great spot for the rest of TDE. But we also see Leaves is the one who picks up the shutdown, and that's going to be a big problem. He's one of the best players that we have in the jungle. Fang over Fang, I know he's in chat, said that Leaves is the only other jungler in all of Mythic that he respects as a player. The only person that he thinks can actually take him down. And so far, he's got 3 kills to his name and just picked up a huge shutdown.
If we go back to what Zane was talking about at the beginning of the series, this was 3-2 matchup, super close between SLR and TDE. I know the rest of the members of SLR would rather not have to play against TDE a second time, knowing how close it was last time.
Yeah, super close. Whereas we have to remember that YUBI kind of got blasted in their semifinal, right? It was a 3-0 by YOLO. And, you know, say what you will about it, it was definitely a bit of a demoralizer. They said that this was a bit of a tougher season for them earlier on this split. And so we'll see if they can kind of bounce back from that. Because Brian, as soon as he heard that they got knocked out, or I guess not heard, but was experienced that they got knocked out, it's like, hey, anybody want to play some Final Fantasy?
See, that's the real reason why Brian would want to play Yumi, so that he can have a Final Fantasy open on a second monitor.
True, you know, maybe he can play with his static at the same time. But as we start moving over, this is going to be the 3rd dragon of the game. 3,000 gold lead coming in for YUBI. And remember, they won this fight last time with a deficit.
Bob Joseph didn't realize that there was a Void Bug waiting in the wings, but he upped the heal, able to heal enough, and now Leaves. Oh, he dies in the Umbral Trespass. Ultravox is able to trade one back with that Mega Death Rocket. It's a 1-for-1, but with Dragon coming up 14 seconds and no jungler on the side of TDE, you have to imagine that YUBI will have the advantage.
How are they going to move these top laners? Both of them pivotal to the way they actually want to play. Jappy has a fantastic TP ward if he goes to the control ward here in just a second. They don't have a smite to play with. The utility monster uses his as well. If Jappy teleports to this ward, there's actually a fighting chance.
Do they know? Did they see utility monster use smite?
Probably not. Oh, they just
Goes
go.
Bane, sweeps up utility monster, and if you don't have a jungler, you might as well take out the other one so you have at
That's
least
a
a
reset.
50-50 advantage. And Ultravox, despite getting punished in lane, is now on the resets. He has the movement speed from the
Blaze is on the way.
passive. But Jaffe having to now frontline, making sure that Red does not get into the backline. Ultravox, still the only person that does enough damage, but leaves having respawn, gets back onto the field. Still 10 seconds before utility monster is back on the field as well. Brian Sting coming in. Shirelia's popping for the movement speed, looking for the dark binding. Red comboing it right onto Bob Joseph. And now Jaffe's on the run, doesn't get a chance to use the Haymaker shield. Leaves looking for the knockup, but Ultravox cannot do much. And now it is Silverlock that runs Ultravox down.
Still looking for Leaves as well. The ace in the hole, is it going to be enough? No, Leaves should be able to
laser?
run, but there's a ghost.
Oh, the knockup with enough slow. He's moving. He's got him.
Wow. Yet again, YUBI coming out on top, and this is one of the things that you always see with TDE compositions. When they play for the team fight, they tend to be so unwieldy. It's so hard for them to lock down individual members unless they find some of these flanks, unless Jeff is a little bit too far forward, but he had the flash, he had the Gale Force. He was not worried about the fight this time around, and they can't get to him at all. So we'll take another look at the actual replay. And remember, this is after Leaves and Brian Sang have already gone down. And we kind of go back to a bit of a 3v3, a bit of an opportunity for them to fight. But I was looking at the potential teleport from Jaffe going towards the control ward behind the Dragon Pit. But instead, he teleports to the mid lane. You can't just go straight up the pipe against Caitlyn and Victor. They will just shred you and slow you down. And so even though this looks okay because they catch Utility Monster with Zen's ultimate again, they aren't able to get either of these backline members. They just shred through the fight.
And the fact that Jaffe just combos his ultimate right on top, he no longer has any strong CC abilities to lock down Jeff and Civil Lock for the rest of the remaining of the fight. So now the agency is on Red to be able to combo back in, and it's exactly what gives YUBI the advantage to be able to continue out the rest of the fight.
Yeah, I mean, that now Kiss move, unfortunately missing, means that suddenly they find themselves overextended. Their front line isn't strong enough, and I don't think Leaves has the ultimate back up again. So as you see the front line kind of get split up, there's no one to stand between the crowd control and the back line, and you be able to just clean it up. The team fighting prowess that TDE was already talking about coming back into full fruition as they find themselves a third dragon.
As we return back to current game time for the side of YUBI. We had alluded to this happening from the beginning of the game, from the beginning of the series, that, as we were mentioning time and time again, we're going to sound like a broken record at some point, probably by game 3 or game 4, but, you know, YUBI being favored for the team fight. The fact that they bypassed what normally is a strong advantage for TDE and just hammering down the pressure in this Caitlyn Morgana. The fact that no one from TDE could really bail out Ultravox and Bob Joseph. No one could alleviate that pressure enough. The only thing they could do was try and hammer down on the top side of the map. But, I mean, clearly the advantage was nowhere near in comparison to be able to get it.
Look where Red's hovering. He's in the perfect spot. They're trying to make a play on the Civil Lock.
Can he get out? No flash, no ghost available. This is one way to do it, though. I mean, TDE are just going to be able to find ways to punish overextension.
Yeah. That was very close. That's a lot of damage that Victor is pumping out right now. I'm not a huge fan of the Lich Bane, but I'm sure it's a high win rate on Analytics. But right now, this is a lot of tempo that TDE currently have. Bob Joseph can heal himself back up relatively quickly. And with the Baron on the table, would not be surprised they just go for it. They go for Ultravox as well.
Is this on your bingo card somewhere, Josh?
Kind of. Does that count as Ultravox frontlining? Yes. All right. I get the confirmation from producer that it does in fact count. Ultravox ends up going down and just kind of gets caught out. Brian Sang just being a bit of a Chad as they now have to defend their inner turret.
This is the flip that we wanted to see from game 1. We knew that Brian normally is one to pull the trigger. And on the Nautilus, we saw it multiple times, but the massive advantage from laning phase is now paying in full dividends. Red frontlining for the team while Leaves and Jaffe are unable to get through the Arctic Pig. Not able to lock down Jeff for a potential revenge kill.
And instead, we're just going to be going back into a bit of a situation where we got to see how the lane phase, or the lane assignments actually start working out again. There's not a whole lot of reason to try and defend this Azir turret, right? It doesn't give that much gold over if it ends up falling. And you notice that Ultravox is down in the bottom side, might get caught out as Utility Monster is hovering down there as well.
Black
Oh
shield
yeah, he's just
used.
dead.
Oh.
He's gone. Yeah, and oh, he still has a Rift Herald as well. Utility Monster catching out. Ultravox is going to open up the bottom side of the map even further. And this is the first time that Utility Monster has done much of anything this game, right? He hasn't had a whole lot of impact in a lot of these other fights, but now this is huge, picking up a kill, getting more tempo, blowing up the Rift Herald, blowing up the bottom side of the map, and allowing the rest of his team to sit in siege. This is perfect for Caitlyn and Morgana.
This is fantastic macro play from the side of YUBI. They're starting to stranglehold the members of TDE away from remaining resources that they can safely get access to. And because Jaffe has been left to his own devices, this is a massive rotation on over. Unfortunately for Jaffe, he just has nowhere to go.
Yeah, nowhere to go, nothing to do, cannot keep up to Victor with all the movement speed that he has with the Lich Bane and the Ludens, and the Ghost as well, so Jaffe's struggling in his side lane. Zenzen's not going to be able to match him with the Azir, and this is pretty textbook YUBI gameplay, right? You have all the dragon, you have an advantage coming out of your bottom side of the map, and now you slowly strangle your opponents off the map. TDE, they're going to have to find a way to come back into this, right? The one opportunity that they really have is they can layer ultimates. If they can layer the Emperor's Divide from Zenzen with the Crescendo from Bob Joseph and lock everybody up for long enough, maybe you can do enough damage. But that's such a difficult task to actually make happen because you don't have vision control. You can't come in, you can't set up any of these flanks. And, you know, Leaves is playing on the Rost again. If he'd been playing the Shadow Assassin, maybe he could pick people off, but he's never going to do that on this character.
Leaves is tasked to be a disruptor, the one that is soaking up all the attention. It's nowhere near the same type of burst on the Shadow Assassin. And for the side of TDE, they're really relying on Zenzen and Ultravox in the late game to make up that difference. The problem is at the moment, there's a 5,000 gold difference between the two marksmen because Jeff and Brian have been hammering this advantage since day one of this game.
So close at this point. 70 CS up already, and now Jeff can kind of do whatever he wants. I can't wait to see the damage he does once he actually starts hitting people with his gun. As Brian goes?
He's one-lining in, but he has stasis, so it's working at the moment. It gets the cleanse out of Ultravox.
Okay.
Here, Jaffe, but he just kidnaps Brian, takes him right on back to Zane. Shut down over for him. Leaves, gets traded out by Jeff God Gamer, and the rest of TDE are forced to retreat. And this is bad news bears for the side of TDE because they're now down a jungler, and Infernal Soul is about to come up.
Yeah, this is basically checkmate coming out for YUBI. We'll see how they actually try and close this one out. It's so difficult when Brian is able to run forward like that. Still has the stopwatch. They're hunting for Sivlock, but they're not going to catch him.
Yeah. And if they wanted to approach from the right side, Jeff and Red are waiting in the wings to force them off, to allow the utility just to solo out this dragon without anyone from the side of TDE to look for a miracle seal.
Yeah, and while this has all happened as well, Jeff comes over, they get the Infernal Soul, but they also get the bottom lane inhibitor turret. That just falls to minions while everybody was so caught up in the mid lane. And Rafa, I think at this point, we are just moments away from going to Game 3 with a 1-1 score. TDE cannot walk over and try and contest this impending Baron, and Utility Monster can just kill anybody who tries to come mess with him on the other side. So YUBI bouncing back hard in Game 3.
Yeah. And we talked about what would most likely happen going into Game 2, that there would be a massive range change up for the effective backline. Jeff wanted to try out the Samira, right? Didn't really pan out.
It's an experiment.
Yeah, you know, it's a good experiment. Best of 5, you get to test some things and you learn some things. And, you know, going back to blue side, they recognize, all right, Caitlyn, high priority for this series. They immediately snipe it away. And because TDE did not have really a good way of being able to stop the pressure that was continuously Caitlyn and Morgana just perma-pushing under the waves, we don't normally talk about bot lane being an island in competitive League of Legends. This was one of the few moments where it truly felt like one.
Yeah, and YUBI were constantly peeling people away from, in a situation where they could not help out Ultravox and Bob Joseph. And now, as we start lining up for another siege, again, this is where Kaylin and Morgana make their bread and butter. This is the perfect part of the game for them. And at the same time, again, remember, the bottom lane inhibitor turret went down earlier to minions. They can't even defend that.
Tough situation for TDE. As you already called it out, I mean, if you're getting locked down and poked out from long range away with Baron buff on your side, I think you pretty much had it, Josh. We are moments away from the series being evened up here. Brian going in once again. Leaves is going to use the Umbral Trespass, but Brian is not the guy you have to be worrying about. You have to be worrying about Jeff God Gamer. Here comes Jaffe, potentially a miracle play, but Jeff is able to distance himself with a beautiful flash to the left side, popping the Mastery 7 once again. Bob Joseph and Zen Zen are the last members alive, but they might just witness their Nexus falling as YUBI will take us to Game 3, evening up the series.
All right, quick, everybody, before we jump to a break, which we'll do soon, make sure you vote for Brian as the player of the game. This time, I need it for my bingo card, okay?
Do I have one for Brian as well? Damn it, I don't have one. All right, I don't care. You can vote for whoever you want.
I think it's between Brian and Jeff, right? Like, those two guys just beasted through this bottom lane, and they never really let up.
Okay, I don't actually, before we send it to break, I need to look at something. So bans were... Okay, let me ask this. Does Maokai comes as a jungler in this series, right?
I mean,
not
jungle top support for YUBI.
Yeah, but I just need, jungle?
Yeah.
Okay, I need to check off more than 5 jungle bans in this draft because we have
Oh, man.
Bel'Veth.
All right, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, Bel'Veth, Nocturne, Maokai, Zac, Olaf, and I think that was it. So that's why I was like,
Gotta count, gotta count. We didn't quite get to a Flame Horizon, or did we at the very end? Real quick, could you cycle through, show us the rest of the scoreboard real quick? View advanced details. Yeah, but we can see. Can you show us the advanced details?
Yeah, we need
right? Yeah, that's what we're looking for. Okay. Scroll down. Actually, I won't be able to see it. We'll figure it out. We will figure it out, and we will see if we ever got a Flame Horizon so that we can check off another one on our bingo card. Follow along in the Trash Talk channel as well. And for now, we're going to take a break, and I'm going to go get some Sloppy Joes.
Woohoo!